Ratchet & Clank on the PlayStation 2 was a critical and commercial success for Sony, so of course they were going to give Insomniac Games permission to do it again. But despite slightly rushing the concept of Ratchet & Clank after cancelling Girl with a Stick, Insomniac was so confident in their new IP, they already developed visual concepts for a potential sequel. Playtesters were so impressed with the first game's prototype, Sony approved a Ratchet & Clank sequel 5 months before the predecessor was even released. Ratchet & Clank Going Commando hit shelves worldwide on November 2003. This was also when Insomniac were being clever with their titles. Yeah. The PAL regions didn't see the funny side and renamed it Locked and Loaded. But we're still calling it Going Commando for this review. Oh, look what Ratchet is playing.
Welcome back to Behind the Hero. Tonight's heroes are the duo who recently restored peace and order to our galaxy. Ratchet and Clank.
Ratchet and Clank have solidified their status as saviors of the galaxy in the predecessor, but are still living low-key lives.
We're still pretty busy, but in a more, domestic sense.
Yesterday, I flushed out my radiator core.
They're bored, waiting for something to happen. But after appearing on the show Behind the Hero, they're immediately teleported to the Borgon Galaxy by head of Megacorp, Fizzwidget.
I must humbly request your sustenance on a mission of dire urgitude, a mission of superfluous peril, a mission of unequivocal imperitude.
Did that make any sense?
That's what I call desperate. Fizzwidget gives you a task of retrieving a biological prototype on Uranus. But while Ratchet was searching the planet, it's taken by an anonymous thief, and for good measure, he takes Clank with him.
Oh.
Say what you will about Ratchet's personality and temper in the predecessor, but in Going Commando, he's more mature and less cocky, which means fewer infights.
Oh yeah, I've got mad skills.
Yeah. A difficult challenge, but one that a trained commando...
Hold on. I'm intercepting a transmission.
Also, he meets another Lombax, Angela Cross.
Just be careful.
Right.
With the combination of new and returning characters, Going Commando is another tale of domination for revenue, and it's up to Ratchet, Clank, and Angela to put an end to this chaos. Only they're more established this time, and the whole thing is centered on the pet project. It's predictable, but the goofiness and sense of humor more than make up for it.
Hey, what? What?
Oh, nothing. Just some robot humor.
If you played the first game, after half an hour of this, you can tell that it looks and feels exactly like the same from the menus to the sound effects. But there are improvements. The Ratchet and Clank models, for example, look more detailed, the levels are bigger, brand new, cleverly designed for platforming both artistically and gameplay wise, and you don't have to backtrack as much, just as you'd expect from the Ratchet and Clank series. Except when it comes to the number of enemies on screen, we'll get to that. Going Commando can run in 60 frames per second and is widescreen and progressive scan compatible. Unfortunately in the PAL region, progressive scan isn't available. But if you have a PlayStation 3, regardless of what region you're from, you can get the most technically superior version thanks to the Ratchet & Clank trilogy. I love the creativity in a Ratchet & Clank game. It sort of blurs the lines between a kid's cartoon and a mature science fiction film series, just like another certain PlayStation IP.
Sorry.
Touché, Insomniac. The Jak and Daxter Easter eggs are thanks in large part to the close relationship Insomniac Games have with Naughty Dog from their Universal Interactive years to this day. I'll elaborate further in a future Jak 2 review. Critics back in 2003 praised Going Commando for improving the gameplay from the predecessor in every way. Well, I'm not so sure about that. Okay, it has improved, but critics make it sound like the series jumped to astronomical levels with this one. Ratchet has over a dozen weapons to choose from. They can either be purchased at a vendor station along with ammo, or earned through specific missions. Finally, gameplay is paused when you select a weapon. If you played the first Ratchet & Clank and still have the save file from the memory card, the weapons you had on that journey can be obtained in Going Commando for free. This also applies to the aforementioned PS3 trilogy. They're just as over the top as you'd expect. The Synthenoid and the Sheepinator are a nice touch. Regular play and platinum bolts can upgrade a weapon, bombs can turn into mini nukes, rifle bolts can turn into lasers, and rockets can fire semi-automatically to name a few. Just remember to remain inconspicuous.
I can take your puny little weapon, and with a few, tweaks, I can turn it into a powerful piece of equipment.
This was actually the biggest priority to the game designers, which is probably why it was so detailed. Health, aka nanotech, can also be upgraded through killing enemies. You start with 4 hit points and it can reach up to 80, but it's not going to help too much because enemies become stronger as you progress, taking more than just 1 hit damage, sometimes a third of your health. So be prepared to fight in battle arenas for bolts regularly, we'll also get to that. Ratchet controls exactly the same, from the movement to the way he attacks. If you've recently played the first game, you'll feel right at home. Also like the predecessor, because the camera moves slowly and smoothly, it can give you motion sickness, hardly obvious when you're using the space boots. When entering first person, if you're firing, let's say, a pulse rifle, like GoldenEye 007, you have to stop to aim, and the enemies aren't exactly waiting for you to get in position. But one new addition that becomes extremely handy is being able to lock the camera and strafe, something that should become second nature when playing any Ratchet & Clank title after this one. The Trespasser in the first game was a tedious gadget because it slowed the game down. They've replaced it with the Electrolyzer. It's easier, I suppose, but they went a step further. They added more than one, the Infiltrator, which is basically a guessing game.
That's it. This galaxy flows.
Did they not learn from the predecessor? The Clank puzzle stages are good enough. You have to think about every Gadgetbot function, there's more variety, and it doesn't ruin the flow the same way the Electrolyzer and the Infiltrator do. I understand that plowing through enemies can get boring over time, but that's also what the mega games are for. Not mini games, mega games, according to Ted Price anyway. Like the controls, each one has been improved slightly. These racing stages take more inspiration from Wipeout because they're fast paced.
Hang in there, my brother. Bluebell is in good hands.
And Clank has more opportunities to become an informative giant of destruction.
Sweet.
He gets his own levels this time. I'm still not a huge fan of the space combat, but if Ratchet and Clank have their own spaceship, it has to be included somewhere. The arena stages are also a decent way to earn extra bolts, but to anyone who dares enter the impossible challenge, good luck. To be honest, good luck with the entire game. The predecessor didn't have that many checkpoints to pass through if you screw up, so what did they do in this? Well, they let you know if you passed a checkpoint, and that's it. Seriously, what is it with PlayStation 3D platform exclusives having a horrible number of checkpoints in a level? We're looking at you, Jak 2. When you reach the final stages, it becomes apparent. These Terminators are so tough they can withstand a nuclear bomb. The mini rocket tube is the only useful weapon up to this point, but the maximum ammo is 25, and each enemy takes about 3 or 5 rockets to kill. Sure, all weapons in general carry more ammo than its predecessor, but it's still not enough. So you have to keep running back to the weapon station to refill because ammo boxes are scarce. Even if your weapons are fully upgraded, you'll have to keep running back and forth. And if you screw up, as if the lack of checkpoints wasn't enough, all the enemies respawn. But does your ammo? Nope.
Well, we don't have any better ideas.
And on the planet Gremlin, if you want to collect these crystals for either bolts or for the sake of completing 100%, it's a suicide mission. But if you want this Carbonox armor, which is ludicrously overpriced, or lots of weapons fully upgraded in preparation for the final boss, you've got to obtain them just to barely survive. If you like a challenge, well, good for you, you'll definitely get it here. But this game is aimed at all ages. Kids would go mental with these parts, and not in a good way. This probably explains why Going Commando has a teen rating. Strangely, however, the rest of the boss battles are pretty easy. The only thing about the difficulty I can defend, the curve is almost perfect. It actually does a great job teaching you the gameplay mechanics on the first few stages, especially if you've never played a Ratchet & Clank game before. When you reach those challenging stages, you've already learned the gameplay to the best of your abilities, and once you eventually plow through, it's highly satisfying.
Backup! I need backup!
In short, it has the same huge flaws from the predecessor, but also the same fun gameplay with minor tweaks. Which means if this was a Call of Duty sequel, it'd be the worst game of the year in gamers' eyes, right? But Ratchet & Clank are too likable for that kind of treatment.
Alright, 6 crates of nitroglycerin and... Look, just give me double there, and I need it delivered!
You can tell that Insomniac tried to expand on the sequel to the best of their ability given they had just over a year. There's no way good games are made that quickly anymore. It's a new adventure where every little piece of the gameplay is a little bit better. So maybe the critic scores being a little bit better actually makes perfect sense. Ratchet & Clank Going Commando is a solid entry to the series. Just be prepared for a frustrating experience. It'll take you by surprise.